Two. What's up, folks? Chin chin. Got a rain orange dreamsicle. Orange dreamsicle rain today. Oh. That's real good. That really hits the spot. I just ate a burrito as well. I just ate like a spicy, salty burrito. And the ice cold orange dreamsicle really complemented that nicely. Very nice. I should start drinking it out of like a champagne flute or something. Would that be cool? If I started drinking my Rain Total Body Fuel out of a fancy little champagne flute? That'd be fun, right? That'd be fun. Some kind of goblet. Yeah. Or chug it like that guy who does those videos. Who, me? Am I the guy that does those videos? You need the triangle of flutes overflowing into each other. That's what when we do the TRRS meetup. When we do the TRRS meetup, that's what we're gonna bring the class. We're gonna have one of those big towers of champagne flutes, and you pour the Rain Total Body Fuel into the top one, and it cascades down. That's what I mean. Yeah, the champagne fountain. There we go. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Excellent drip today. Thank you, Marina. Thank you. I always appreciate hearing that from someone else who displays significant drip. You know? I certainly appreciate it more than getting compliments from the rest of the rabble. The rest of the plebs. Not to overstate it, but Rob is something of a style icon. I mean, I didn't want to come right out and say it like that. But yes, I do need to get my hair cut. That's part of why I like wearing this hat. Part of why I'm wearing it is because I just need a haircut. That is part of it. I do just like this hat though, and in fact, I couldn't find this hat. This hat was like lost. This hat was lost for multiple days, and I just found it. It was under my sofa. The hat was under the sofa, and I found it this weekend. I was like, it was a nice little surprise. I'm also in the Hat to Hide Hair Club at the moment. It's just not good. I mean, and then I looked back at Friday's stream, and I was just like, man, I really needed a hat, and I had nothing. Shit do be hiding under sofas. How does it get under there? How did, like, in all honesty, how does a hat get under your sofa? How? You sound great. Thank you, Gothen Gelsener. Thank you. The cat was playing with it. Yeah, possible Momo sabotage. I don't know. It is. I do need to get a haircut, though. This is not... I mean, it kind of looks okay in this moment, just in the way that my hat just came off, but, like, overall, it's not a good situation right now over here. Your hair looks fine. Yeah, it actually looked fine when I took my hat off just now, but overall, though, it's been not great. Grow it out long and do the Ric Flair hair with me. Your hair is looking pretty good lately, Outrun, I gotta say. See, your spouse supports this, though. I don't get this kind of encouragement, unfortunately. The bisexual lighting makes it look respectable. Thank you. Just get it a little trimmed. Well, the thing is, I can never just get it trimmed because I don't like going to get it cut. I always just have to cut it short, and then because then I don't have to go for like, 5-6 months, sometimes longer. Anyway, I'm glad people appreciate the drip. Don't think it goes unnoticed when I get these positive comments. Yellow Dan, I think she generally wants me to rein it in a little bit. Overall. I like to express myself, though. Rein it in, that's right. That was I get paid by the Rain Corporation when I just say the word, because subliminally it has an effect, so I get a per mention rate. Yeah, I'm not sure, Outrun, I appreciate your support, but I'm not sure that would go over super well. If I said my Twitch bucks pays for this, you'd be like, it actually doesn't. It does not, actually. And I'd be like, true. True, but when you think about it, why am I suddenly so thirsty? I crave mental clarity. That's the thing. I've been spending the last year and a half MK Ultraing all of you. So at a moment's notice, I can just use the code words, and you get activated like the Winter Soldier. And you go to your local dépanneur, your local corner store, bodega, corner shop, whatever you want to call it. There's a name for it in every culture. I say the words and just go, buh, and you before you know it, you've got one in your hand. You're like, I don't even remember getting this. I don't even remember purchasing this delicious, refreshing beverage. That's why I'm the producer. You couldn't MK Ultra me because I was already brainwashed in a drug cult. You really showed me. You really showed me there. That's just growing up and okay, innit? Are you becoming an init guy, an unironic init guy now, Outrun? That's multiple inits I've seen in the chat so far, 18 minutes into this bad boy. You're watching too much football. You're watching too much of the bloody football. I need everyone in this chat to manifest health and wellness for me as I go to a conference in a month. Oh boy. We're with you, Red Scary. We're with you. So we'll see. I tweeted that I'm live, and I attached my tweet under the viral tweet that I have going right now. We'll see if that has any impact whatsoever on viewer numbers. We'll see if that has any impact whatsoever. Oh, that's so good. Oi, bruv, I turned British. Hey, mate, pass me that bottle of water. In it. Pass me that bottle of water. Bottle of water. These people claim to have invented the fucking language. Explain that. Someone explain that to me. Explain to me how the people that invented the English language can say things like bottle of water. Explain that to me. Can we watch the vid of the guy outing the undercover cop on stream? I don't know if I saw that. Was that at one of the, like, the Roe v. Wade protests? Like, I saw something about that there. I wasn't sure if that guy was if I'm thinking of the same clip, I wasn't sure if that guy was undercover or just this, like, white supremacist that was just being buddy-buddy with the police. But I repeat myself. We are going to be talking about the horrible, scary protests. Vowel drop is a really cool explanation of how British and American accents have changed and continue to change throughout history. Basically, the Southern Belle accent, i.e. Red Scary, is what British people used to sound like back pre-1776. Fascinating. No, it was in the UK, okay.
Oh.
There's some funny stuff going on in the UK that I would even like to talk about. In the UK, do we have any of our British friends in the chat? I must admit, it's quite amusing seeing what's happening with Keir Starmer and how, like, his whole premise was based on, like, courting these reactionary media outlets, attacking the left, attacking the conservatives over, like, dumb bullshit like them having parties during COVID lockdowns, and, like, now he put everything into that basket, and now he's being attacked by these same fucking horrific British rags that he courted endlessly for his own he had a bit of a cheeky point during the lockdown. And now he's getting in trouble for the same thing that he spent months attacking Boris Johnson over, rather than all the, like, economic policies that he could have been attacking him over. And he's facing, like, 1/1000th of the constant attacks that Corbyn was under from the British press, and he's just wilting. He's just wilting like a daffodil in a windstorm. I just made up that expression. I don't know if that's a common idiom. I just made that, just kind of came out to describe someone who's wilting a lot. And now he's like he's in this weird place where he, like, has to resign based on the standard that he's himself has now set. He's been insisting for that Boris Johnson for months just resign because he had a cheeky pint during the cheeky lockdown, and now he's like, by his own standard, he must himself resign. And now he might have to. And Johnson, of course, will not do that. Starmer will do it to show how he's, like, above the fray, and he's, like, not afraid to, if I'll resign, then I submit that the Prime Minister should also resign. And Boris Johnson's going to be like, no, thank you. No, I will not. No. And that's what you get. Again, he's been purging the left. He's been courting these reactionary press outlets. He's been suggesting that, like, rather than pursue any, like, left economic policies. They're just going to be the slightly more competent and stable managers of empire. And now the same British press that he's been courting is coming after him. Again, it's a minuscule amount of the pressure that Corbyn was under constantly from these British media outlets, and he's just losing it. He did his job, the bastard. That's right. He'll step down and immediately get a position on BBC. Well, that's it. It's like, I imagine that he'll just continually fail upwards like anyone in that position. But, you know, he wanted to be leader of the Labour Party. He wanted to be leader he wanted to be Prime Minister. So it would be pretty funny if he failed spectacularly at that. Excuse me. It's weird how even a parliamentary system ends up leading the nation to a two-party system who are essentially the same. You have the same issue here in Canada. Right? And that's part of first past the post. I mean, the system is fucked up to begin with, but first, a parliamentary system with multiple parties, if it's first past the post, it still is like essentially a two-party system. Except you have, rather than having like a progressive wing of one party and a conservative wing, you have different parties. But it's the same effect. You like the Boris impression, Outrun? The amount of left-wing Britons I knew who just accepted that Corbyn was anti-Semitic was wild. I mean, we don't need to get into this again, but we talked about this, I think the last time this came up, last week sometime. How that should be the road, how we need to understand when these smear campaigns are starting, why they're starting, and in the future, any kind of left-wing movement that's even close to getting in power is going to be subject to similar smear campaigns, and you can't give it oxygen. And Corbyn himself gave it oxygen, but there was plenty of the compatible left in the UK who also gave it oxygen. And in the future, that has to be you have to recognize these smear campaigns when they're happening and just say, no, fuck you. Solid Boris voice, excellent. So here's the video that Red Scary sent. Let's change this. Oh, man. This is really good. Really good stuff. Blueberry was the original poster. Okay. Okay, good. Let's see this. I have not seen this clip. Let's take a look.
Welcome to my seat, innit?
You still got your tag in your belly?
Yeah, I do still. What you guys saying, though? What you guys doing here, though?
Check that out.
What you guys doing here, though? Post it up, yeah? Alright, we're doing a video, innit? It's where you rap a drill song, right?
Like 5 years now.
Alright, calm down, lads. Alright, so basically in the video you have to rap a drill song without making a mistake.
Seen them.
Yeah, I bet you have, innit? Yeah. So what, you trying to do a drill song?
Nah.
Alright, cool. So what's it like being an undercover police?
Fuck it off.
Oh, you can't answer? Oh, you're walking away, innit? Drillings! Yeah, cover blow that go, fam. Yeah, fam. Yeah. G-Leads. Hey, look at this freaking guy over here, this Gucci patch. Hey, where's your Gucci patch from? The corner store. It's fake, fam. It's fake. Arrest me. Arrest me, fam. Oh, I haven't committed a crime, and you're mad because of that. G-Leads, cover blown. Everybody, if you're going to commit a crime today, there's an undercover officer, there's another one, and that lady over there as well. So make sure when you're committing your crimes, you guys stay undercover. This one over here, fam, this fake Jeff Bezos looking you, fam. All right, come, let's get back to the video, innit?
We love it. We love it. Wonderful. Well, a geezer. Look at this geezer. Look at this undercover geezer over here. You know, in other UK news, actually, this is important as well. Comrade Piers Morgan breaking the news. Thank you, Piers. We're witnessing the impending and I think now inevitable collapse of the United Kingdom. Say it slower, Piers. That's great stuff. I know we can get pretty doomer around here. Sometimes it's very discouraging thinking about what the future holds, you know? I get it. I get discouraged too. It's not all bad though. There's some okay stuff that's happening. That the geezer who plays for Tottenhamshire. Yeah. You know, it's easy to be discouraged about things that are going on, but it's not all bad. It's not so bad, innit? Is this revolutionary optimism? I don't know. It's something. It's something. Who knows? Sinn Féin is the like political arm of Irish republicanism, right? Who want to reunify Ireland. And without speaking too authoritatively about it, but my understanding is that the whole political system in Northern Ireland has been set up in such a way to ensure that like only unionist parties will ever really be in charge. And the idea of Sinn Féin actually winning is like a pretty historic thing. Ireland and Greece are the only countries with major Rev left parties. The rest of the continent is sad. Well, that's what a generation of anti-communism will bring, right? Multiple generations. Anyway, again, it's easy to be discouraged or to be depressed about the state of things. But there are things that we can hold on to that are not so bad. What's up, Carrier Wave? Hello. So I don't know. We can continue hanging out for a little bit. I do have some stuff planned to get into. We are going to be talking about protest. We are going to be talking about, this extremely reactionary movement to restrict reproductive laws, restrict abortion rights, and what the reaction for that is starting to be. And of course, the reaction, protesting in front of the homes of Supreme Court justices is being, where the liberals' finger wagging is coming out about this, right? The people who have sat by and allowed all this shit to happen are now wagging their fingers at the extremists that are, out there protesting in front of people's houses. We're going to talk about all this. We're going to talk a little bit about the Victory Day stuff that happened over the weekend. Number of things to get into. Too bad. It's a good attitude to have about it. Any Trudeau to Ukraine content, we can look at a bit of that. And listen, I think Pelosi, Trudeau, Freeland, a bunch of people are in Ukraine. Like, if they're not right now, they were this weekend. And all I got to say to that is, Vladimir, just do it and be a legend. Parody. We like to do jokes. We like to tell jokes. We like to tell jokes on this Twitch channel. Jokes. Is humor illegal now? Is it illegal to tell a joke? Are we still allowed to tell jokes on social media websites such as Twitch? Excuse me. Sorry if I might still think that we live in a society where we can do a little jape. That's right. We're just doing japes over here, and that's all. We're having a cheeky riff in it. Anyway. Anything else going on? What else do we got? Taking predictions for how many other modes of transportation will launch convoys to occupy Ottawa. I'm hoping for boats. I mean, Canada is overdue for a beautiful boaters movement. We love our beautiful boaters. Maybe the Polyvare heads can organize this. The Pro-Pierre boating convoy. The Pro-Pierre beautiful boaters. Kevin O'Leary is the ultimate beautiful boater. Listen, Kevin O'Leary was just engaging in the ancient rich person custom of boat murder. Okay? That's part of rich people's culture. Boaticular homicide. And we might not understand that. But it's disrespectful, frankly, to denigrate other cultural institutions like this. We might not understand this as being a non-person of wealth, as I and others are. But Kevin O'Leary was simply taking part in the long-standing rich person tradition of boat murder. And I don't know if it's up to you or me to cast judgment on that, okay? Please, let's keep it respectful over here. Let's keep things respectful. That's what this stream is about. Respectful, civil discourse. One boat, one vote. Thank you. Also, fun fact, when I graduated from Auburn in 2011, I was really close to working for Lockheed Martin in Troy, Alabama on a particularly interesting project called the Javelin. And guess who visited that facility last week? Joe Biden. Of course, I did the next best imperialist thing and worked for an oil company in Oklahoma. Oh boy, only fact. You're doing capitalist bingo over here. What's up, G. Cluppy? G. Cluppy is someone who understands the concepts of civil discourse, which we're going to be talking about today. Now I work for myself. No judgment, only fact. Everyone's trying to make a living. Listen, I'm here toiling away each and every day in my basement talking about this stuff, slowly just like encouraging people to subscribe to this channel so the richest man in the world, or right now the second richest, who knows, money's fake anyways, but so Jeff Bezos gets a little bit of a kickback. I'm here every single day hawking Twitch subs so Jeff Bezos can like install another bathroom in his yacht. One of his many yachts. Famous rich boat murderers, awesome Murdoch Kennedy. Does Kennedy count? I mean, technically Kennedy's murder happened in a car. I mean, if you're a rich person and you commit a murder by submerging your car in water, does that count as a boat murder? I don't know. I mean, it's an automobile technically. Does it become a boat once it's in the water? Maybe that does count. I'm not sure. We're gonna have to go to the judges on that one, whether that counts. It was a boat for about 20 seconds. Yeah. Is a hot dog a sandwich? You know what? I'm going to say no. I think there's all kinds of weird, like, rhetorical trickery about this. Oh, but a hot dog is simply a piece of meat between two pieces of bread. Oh, a burrito is fillings and with like a bread top. No, a burrito is a burrito. A hot dog is a hot dog. A sandwich is like we know that there's a difference between a hot dog and a sandwich. Okay, it's not the same thing. You can't get it. It's not a technicality. Oh, on a technicality, it's technically a sandwich. It's not. Fuck off. It isn't. Technically a hot dog is a sandwich. I'm so clever. Give me a break. You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle. Thank you, Red Scary. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs, Red Scare. I really appreciate that. Was that for rewarding me for the hot dog take? They occupy totally different spaces in popular consciousness. Thank you, Red Scary. I really appreciate that. What if you put hot dogs in a sandwich? Which I have done before. Yeah, I think technically that would be a hot dog sandwich. I think technically that would be a hot dog sandwich if you put hot dog meat in between bread. That would be a hot dog sandwich, in my opinion. For the record, Teddy was driving a 67 Oldsmobile Delmont. Definitely qualifies as a boat. Okay. I think that does count, yeah. Let's not say hot dog meat. You're probably right. We probably shouldn't be saying that. Anyway. Is a corn dog a sandwich? See, now you're just being ridiculous. Now you're being intentionally ridiculous, Maxie. What about the fall of the hot dog? We don't need to get into that, any of that stuff. I'm not familiar with that expression, so couldn't comment. Our division was mainly thick composite piping for fracking, which was big in Oklahoma, Permian Basin in Texas, as well as Alberta. I interfaced with the provinces in Canada to get products qualified in Canada. Canada is pretty stringent, much more than American states, ironically qualifying pipes with such an arbitrary and manipulatable process. Let's just say I know how. Here's the irony as well. The gas fracked in Alberta was piped across America and then shipped to Asia. That's definitely an economic and energy. That's an energy and economic system that makes sense. Absolutely. Because it costs companies $1 a gallon or so and resold in Asia for $4 in America, doesn't have LNG infrastructure, etc. We can get into another topic of the day. Fuck, I have an intensely personal story that I kind of wanted to talk about, but no, I'm not so sure. About something that happened on Friday. Do people like when I talk about like parenting stuff? Maybe we should just move on. I might get emotional also, so it's probably not a good idea to talk about it. I kind of wanted to, but now I'm not so sure. Ugh. TRRS is just Canada and Oklahoma now. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm going to try and tell this story. After this, we can move on and talk about our like topic of the day or whatever. Just this happened on Friday. I'm going to try not to get emotional here. I don't know. You were watching the show last week. I was really sick. My partner was very sick last week. Like she got diagnosed with bronchitis. She was really sick. I was really sick. So trying to like work and do that and take care of my kid, making sure he goes to school, you know, it's tricky. And on Thursday, like he got home and he was like, "Oh, everyone had a tutu." A tutu is it's like a stuffed animal. Everyone was bringing it. And I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm so sorry. I didn't I didn't know that you were supposed to do that. I guess I like wasn't paying close enough attention to like what was going on. And so he missed out on this thing, and I felt really bad. And then on Friday, like I dropped him off. I did the stream. After I left you on Friday, I went to pick him up. And I guess at some point during the day he had gotten really upset because it was this like special thing. It was like this special day or this like a part of their like reading week that they were doing. And again, I was like sick and there's like, there's a lot going on. There's no real excuse for it though. I was just too distracted and I wasn't paying attention to what was going on. I didn't read like the email that I got from his school to explain like what was going on that week. Cause I just, I didn't read it. There's no excuse. And I picked him up on Friday and he was like, everyone had a costume. Everyone had a costume at school. And I got really upset because we forgot a costume. And then I looked at the email later and it's like, oh, they're doing like reading. It's like this reading week thing where everyone gets to wear a costume on Friday and wear a costume of their like favorite book character. And like, he wasn't like the only person that forgot. I guess there were some other kids that forgot as well. But like, that's his like favorite thing. That's his favorite thing to do, like dressing up in costumes. And I got so upset at myself, and I was like, because I had fucked this up. And he's been having a hard enough time at school as it is. It's been his first year of kindergarten. It's like there's all this stuff going on. There's the pandemic. It hasn't always been the easiest thing for him. He goes to school in French and he has a hard time with that. It's been a really difficult transition. But like, I was so upset that he was at school on Friday and all his little friends had their costumes on and he just didn't have one. And it's like his favorite thing to do is to like dress up in costumes and do that kind of stuff. And I was really upset because I was like, there's other stuff going on. Yeah, I'm sick. There's things going on, I'm distracted, whatever, but there's no real excuse. All I had to do is read the fucking email. I have a fucking email in my email that explains what's going on. I just didn't read it. And I just felt so bad. I felt so bad that I had messed that up. I felt really bad for him that he didn't get to participate in that. And it's my fault, right? You can make excuses. Yes, you're human, blah, blah, blah. But it's my own fault. It was my own fault for not doing it. And I just felt so bad. And I cried. Like, I was really upset. I started crying because I was like, fuck, I'm such an asshole. I'm a bad parent. I messed this up. And like, he's everything to me. He's the most important thing in my whole life. And I just felt I felt really dumb and bad for not doing that for him, and for like for the fact that he was like, didn't get to participate in that. And it was funny though, because he was really like, don't cry, Dad. He was like, don't cry, it's okay. He was like patting me on the shoulder, being like, it's okay, Dad. At one point he was like, you're an adult man. He's like, you're not supposed to be crying. You're an adult man. So I guess it was a moment of parenting too, because I'm just like, well, it's being an adult or being a man has nothing to do with it. Sometimes you mess something up and you feel bad, and it makes you how you react. That's how you react to it. Strong men also cry. Oh. So he was really sweet about it. It did kind of like, I think it did kind of like affect him in a way because he's not used to like seeing me like that. But like, I gotta be better. Like, I'm. That's one thing that's like, are you surprised at my tears, sir? But that's the thing. I got to be better at that stuff. It's not like, yeah, I was sick. There's a lot going on. Obviously, there's a pandemic still. There's all kinds of things to worry about. It's my job though to like figure that stuff out. Especially when it comes to my partner, we kind of like, that's kind of the thing, is like that I specifically said like, I will deal with this stuff, and I didn't do it. I fucked up, and I just felt so bad. I felt so bad. But I guess, yeah, it's a parenting moment, you know, trying to tell him that, like, yeah, sometimes you can mess up. Because he was like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And I was like, well, it kind of was. It was my fault. You know, it's my job to make sure that you're prepared to go to school and you have all that stuff. And I didn't do it. And I feel really bad for you that you didn't have a costume at your school today. It comes like earlier in the week. So that's it. It's just like, I felt really, really bad, really horrible, in fact, and still do. And I got to be better. I got to be better at this stuff. Like, there's no fucking excuse. Like ADHD, whatever. Yes, I've got all kinds of issues or whatever. That's not an excuse. I got to be better at that kind of stuff. But that's what happened. Like, that's what happened Friday. Like, immediately after I was with you guys on Friday. I just felt horrible. Horrible. I feel stressed out just thinking about getting a costume together. He's got a million costumes. He would have been happy, like, it would have been easy. Just remember how many important notices our parents never saw because we left them stuffed in our backpacks. I don't think I ever really had that because my mom was a teacher. You know? And I mostly grew up with just my mom. You know, my parents split up. My mom mostly, like, raised me. She was obviously very busy as well. She had a lot going on also. But I think was good at that stuff because she comes from that world. Anyway, I felt so bad about that. I suppose the comic books count as books. Yeah. Please be aware that non-teacher parents miss that stuff constantly. Yeah, no, I know that, and I think there was kids at the school that also weren't really participating, but it still just didn't make me feel better. Didn't make me feel any better about it. I was in a quick meeting, so missed the beginning of this story, but it's really important that he saw you both have and discuss emotions. I also understand they are not perfect. We've had similar situations occur to Little Outrun on VHS. They didn't bring something in for show and share, didn't have money to eat ice cream with their friends on ice cream day. Such a kick in the nuts. That's something that was completely hidden from me until the day my parents split and that. What's up, Small Chungus? Cut off my message, but I get the idea. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And again, parents are going through a lot. It's been a crazy 2 years. It's been a crazy 2 years. I'm going to keep promoting the calendar app on people's phones. Yeah, no, I like, there's ways to figure all this stuff out that are not difficult. I find it difficult because like my brain just is bad when it comes to organizing myself, let alone like a whole other human being. Like it makes sense. There's tools at my disposal that I can use to make sure that I never fuck any of this stuff up, but it's really difficult. Anyway, he was really sweet. Again, he's a sweet guy, and we have a pretty strong relationship. And he was really just like, it's okay, Dad. He's like, I don't want you to cry, Dad. It kind of messed him up. Like he talked about it the whole weekend to the point that I was like, okay, we can stop talking about this now. We can move on from this. We don't need to continue talking about how I fucked something up and was upset and cried about it. We don't have to continue going over this. He's probably telling his whole class now. He's going to tell his teacher today about this. He's like, dude, I didn't even care about it this much. Yeah, that'll teach me to cry. That's it. Yeah. Otherwise, though, I had a pretty good weekend. I hope everyone else had a nice weekend. We spent a lot of time outside. You know, it was really nice this weekend, finally. We're really fortunate, though, even though we rent, we have like a backyard and everything. So we spent a lot of time this weekend hanging out in the backyard, doing that. That was fun. You guys do anything fun for Mother's Day? I mean, not really. We went, my partner was sleeping in a bit on Sunday. So I got him to like, she was still sleeping and I was like, we should go on like a secret mission. Or do you want to come with me on a secret mission? And of course he was like really excited about that. So we went, while she was sleeping, we like snuck out and went in the car. We went and got some flowers. We went and picked up some like coffee and donuts and stuff. We came back, we brought the flowers. I made some breakfast and eggs and bacon and stuff for everybody. And yeah, we just kind of spent the day hanging out outside, which was nice. It was very nice. I was really tired the whole weekend. Both Saturday and Sunday night, I fell asleep like in his bed. Like I didn't hang out or do anything on either evening of the weekend, because I fell asleep at like 10 o'clock after reading a book to him in his bed. I fell asleep and woke up at like 2 a.m, like sleeping in his bed, just like, what the hell's going on? This is off topic, but I grew up for a time around Air Force kids. It was weird how these kids would brag to one another on the basis of what jet their father flew.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Your monthly Bezos bucks, sir. God bless.
Thank you, Dan Boxes. Thank you for the 16 months of Prime and all the support you've shown the community, Dan Boxes. Much appreciated. Thank you. Ugh. Little emotional talking about this shit. Box isn't really a Rob fan, but he loves Bezos. Yeah. It's really just about supporting Jeff more than supporting this channel. We love our boxes, don't we, folks? I showed my kid all the creatures I collected in No Man's Sky, and she ran to get a pencil and paper and tried drawing them for practice. My kid really likes playing No Man's Sky. He really enjoys that. Exploring all the different planets and finding all the creatures and stuff. What he really likes doing is just going with the jetpack and flying and jumping into the water. That's his favorite thing to do. But we've been having fun just sitting down and kind of doing that a little bit. Oh, and by the way, Outrun, happy anniversary. Happy anniversary to Outrun and Clueless on VHS. Both valued community members. The first couple of the TRRS community. Thanks for being open and honest with it, Rob. I think we're all in relatable positions right now. Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks, Sam. Again, it's just like, it is a lot. It's been being a parent, like it's been a lot for everyone, obviously, over the last couple of years. The last 2 years especially. But yeah, it's been hard being a parent during this time. That's cute. Clueless and I are going to meet up today. Like in real life? That's cool. Oh my goodness. It's exciting. Okay. So I suppose it's probably a good time to get into talking about our actual like discourse of the day. By the way, again, I attached my go live tweet to my viral tweet. I have a viral tweet in the six figure likes. And like here's some special SEO optimization. I'll attach this tweet to my viral tweet that I have going around right now. Try and get new followers and new viewers. So far, zero, very little reaction. I believe one new follower. And pretty much the same number of viewers. So go figure this shit out. I don't know. I don't know how this shit works. It is a dog-shaped medium for sharing links. You have to like trick it. You have to trick the system. It is a dog-shaped medium, period. Very true. I agree, but also, how would I have learned about Morbius March? That is true. That is true. It is a great medium for all of us Morbius heads out there to celebrate the successful film Morbius. I've been out of the loop for over a week, saw some whining about protesting. Is that what the discourse has been over lately? Yes, it is. And it's a good segue to get into what we're going to talk about. If you don't mind, though, I am just going to blow my nose and I'll be ready to go. I'll be ready to talk about important, serious business. One sec. Okay. Nice shirt, dude. Thank you, Red Wizard. Thank you. Okay. So I just need a title here. We can talk about this for a while. I would like to talk about the Victory Day stuff as well after. So I think this discourse, can lead us in some pretty interesting directions. Because we're talking about abortion rights right now, right? That's the big, that's obviously what's in the news cycle. I'm going to turn that off. That's what's in the news cycle. Abortion rights are under threat. You have the possibility of Roe v. Wade in the United States being overturned, which is quite naturally, I think, terrifying to a lot of people. You know, it's this really like unprecedented threat to reproductive rights. And I think like it's alarming because we know full well that like pro forced birth activists, that this is the future that they've been working towards and organizing around. And like we pointed out last week, not just organizing around, but engaging in like militant armed struggle in order to bring about this exact outcome. You know, not just about, it hasn't just been protesting outside abortion clinics, but literally bombing clinics, murdering doctors who give abortions. It's been this decades-long struggle to get to this point. But I think even knowing that that was always the goal, the idea that it was going to actually succeed in overturning Roe v. Wade and like act like criminalizing abortion, like what seems to be on the horizon for a number of U.S. states, always felt like something that was really far away, and that was probably really unlikely, just because of how unpopular it is. Right? It's like extremely unpopular. It's a very small, extremely vocal minority that have been spending decades pushing for this. But now it's actually here. Now it's actually on the horizon. And we're seeing like not just abortion rights, but now we're seeing, stuff about contraception, about punishing women who have miscarriages, which is like a fairly common thing that happens in any pregnancy. We've talked about like how abortion is actually when you have is the term an epistopic pregnancy in which the woman's life is under threat, and abortion is like a life-saving medical procedure that is being actually criminalized. Ectopic. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I didn't know the medical term. Thank you. I love being worried about being prosecuted for miscarriage or dying because a fetus's life matters more than mine. And, it was the kind of, I said this last week when we talked about this, but I think worth pointing out when we talk about reproductive rights and abortion rights or whatever. I think there's been this tendency over time on the part of liberals, and I'm probably include myself in this as well. When you talk about abortions and you kind of like accept the right wing framing that an abortion is something that should inspire shame, or is this like terrible moral thing that has happened, and you have liberals that kind of make this argument that like they say like, oh, no one wants anyone to have an abortion, or no one like wants to increase the number of abortions. The reality is, and again, I think when you give in this framing, you accept the framework that there's something like wrong with doing this, which I think is a mistake in and of itself, because it's basically accepting their argument at face value. Whereas the idea is, I think when you talk about reproductive rights, abortion should be free and widely and safe and widely available to anyone who needs one, as should, contraceptives, family planning, other kinds of family planning, as well as, prenatal care, postnatal care, mat leave, daycare, and all this stuff. Like all of this stuff should just be widely available. End of story. And there's no we don't need to have this like moral equivocation. We don't need to like suggest that there's some kind of some shame or anything attached to it. It's literally just all part of healthcare. All of this shit is just part of healthcare that should be free and widely available to everybody. But now, obviously, this decision is inspiring protest. We saw last week how there was protests in LA, and you actually had Homeland Security showing up to these protests and, harassing and assaulting protesters at these like pro-abortion protests. And that led to, now this weekend, there's actually protests that are starting to happen outside the homes of, can you believe this, folks? Here's where it gets scary. If you think millions of women losing, or anyone who needs it, losing access to reproductive services, including abortion, if you think that this is like something that's scary, I'll tell you something that's even scarier. Now, there's some protests that are starting outside the homes of the Supreme Court justices that are making this decision. If you think this assault on reproductive rights is scary, even scarier is the fact that like Brett Kavanaugh and all these like Supreme Court justices that are arbitrarily making these decisions that affect millions of people, predominantly women, but trans men as well. So they're arbitrarily making these decisions, and in fact, in many cases, have been courted over decades and have been deliberately accumulated power in order to make this exact decision. And now there's protests happening outside their homes, and of course, And of course, and NB Pals as well. Thank you, Lodane. And of course, this is set off, I think, a wave of extremely predictable moralizing and hand-wringing from liberals who might, on one hand, claim to be for reproductive rights. They might, on one hand, claim to be pro-abortion, but they're not. But they're saying like, "Oh, this is too much for me. This is too much for me." The idea that there's protests happening outside Supreme Court justices' homes, that's over the line. Regardless, we might not like that they're taking the rights away from millions of people. And people will die from this, by the way. Like we're talking about with, like we're talking about just in the cases of ectopic pregnancies. Women and people that give birth will die from this. People that are seeking out other abortions, like in the black market or outside of this, like in the abortions that are obviously going to still continue to take place, even after they've been made illegal. People are still going to need abortions. People will die as a result of this, which we should point out when we talk about like the idea of violence and what constitutes legitimate protest and what doesn't. This is a decision. Not only that's my point is that not only are millions of people losing their rights, but people will die as a result of this. People will die and people will go to prison, guaranteed, and they're banking on that. Absolutely, yes. So, I mean, and this is my point about this. For all of these sort of liberals that are wringing their hands about protests and how it's counterproductive or it's bad or dangerous to be protesting outside of the homes of the just unelected Supreme Court justices that are making these decisions. My basic point is this: if you don't want anyone protesting outside your house, simply do not spend your entire life accumulating political power in order to take fundamental rights away from millions of people. It's the one easy trick, one weird trick. Protesters hate it. This one weird trick to prevent protests from taking place in front of your house. Simply don't use your unelected position to take rights away from millions of people, and again, which will get people killed. And sent to prison. It will ruin people's lives. The answer will surprise you. This one weird trick. Protesters hate it, right? So let's take a look at some of these like terrible protests. Look at this. Look how terrifying this is. Look how absolutely terrifying this is.
I see you, buddy. We will not go back. I see you, buddy. We will not go back. 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 I see you.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
We will not go back.
Oh my gosh. This is just terrifying. Can you believe this? This is what liberals are fucking hand-wringing about. And I don't want to, not all liberals. I'm sure there's many liberals that are involved in these protests, and good for them. But there's prominent media people and political figures that are really upset about this. They're really hand-wringing. It's the most tame protest I've seen in years. I mean, the really edgy thing, and I can say this as a joke, without promoting anything or promoting any ideas, no one getting any ideas, but I would say if people in the ruling class, the political class, or the corporate class, if they really are upset about protests taking place outside of houses, they're going to really hate the next part that's coming up. But we don't need to get into the details of that. But I would say, yeah, they should probably be thankful that that's all this is for now. Again, there's people that will die. There's millions of people are losing their rights. People will die. People will go to jail. These umbrellas can be used for proto-violence. Proto-violence. Oh my gosh. Remember how the mortgage of the house they're standing outside of mysteriously got paid in full right before he was appointed? Yeah, I do remember that. It's weird how they don't... No one seems interested in really exploring that, about how that happened. About how all these gambling debts got paid off. I've read the original Constitution. Nothing in there against protesting a Supreme Court justice. You know what else? You know what else is not in there? And again, I don't think we don't need to venerate the goddamn U.S. Constitution. We just throw it in the garbage, right? Throw it in the garbage. You throw all these bullshit Western constitutions in the fucking garbage. Also, though, if you're just going on that definition, nothing in there in that U.S. Constitution about a specific number of Supreme Court justices or how many there's supposed to be or how there's not supposed to be. There's nothing in there about that whatsoever. You can have 13, you can have 15. It's not in there. The idea that there's supposed to be 9. Nothing in there about that. Honestly, it was great to see many angry libs in the replies when Jen Psaki tweeted about this today. Well, we can check this out, G Kleppy. I mean, that's one of the positive things is that maybe people are starting to get the idea, right? They're starting to get the idea about what's going on with this administration, what's going on with the liberal democracy in general. We don't get to eat unless Rob lets us. That is true. That's in the Constitution for this program, actually, by the way, to be clear. Trumpers stormed the Capitol, and by and large, there was no civility shaming from GOP leadership. One protest outside a judge's home and Dems lose their minds. They're completely playing a different game and losing badly. And I mean, you saw in the days after, you saw some of the people in the GOP leadership try to kind of pretend that they were against that January 6th stuff. And then once people moved on, they've been overall very supportive of that. And all the GOP leaders that openly supported that January 6th movement are all still being invited to like the Meet the Press and all these Sunday talk shows and all this shit. Protesting is fine by me as long as you do it quietly, sitting down in your home by yourself. That's right. That's exactly right.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
TRRS dang, TRRS dang, TRRS dang, TRRS dang.
Thank you, Force of Bill. Thank you, Force of Bill, for the 16 months resub at Tier 3, helping me build up my productive forces on this very show. Thank you, Force of Bill. So I think all of this, though, opens up this important question. Because again, we talked about this last week when all this stuff started to come out, when this decision leaked. Liberals need to wake up and realize that peaceful protest is entirely predicated on the idea that people in power have sympathy for you. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. You realize how, this comes out, and what's the only solution we hear time and time, and for all these things? Vote. That's all you can do. That's the only thing you can do. Or if you have to go beyond vote, you can do an officially sanctioned, peaceful, non-violent protest, not outside anyone's home, but in an officially designated free speech zone at a specific location that's not a threat to anybody. Again, you can protest in front of the Supreme Court building where we've put good old Rob fences and stuff.
Through all this.
Hi, everyone.
Ms. Squatch, thank you very much for the 4 months of Tier 1. Thank you, Ms. Squatch. We got the whole Squatch fam watching today. And hopefully snacks as well. So that's it. I mean, according to...
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Let's get this hype train moving.
Thank you, Doc Hollywood. Thank you for the 200 friend coin, Doc. The designated free speech cage. I do vaguely remember that bit from Arrested Development. I do vaguely remember that. It was big in the Iraq War, I remember. The Bush administration, the free speech zone. We can look at more of these takes, but by and large, I think that's the main takeaway, is that as we're seeing all these things continue to erode in this kind of like empire in decline, and you talk about, you know, the assault on trans rights, the assault on abortion rights, the worsening climate, all these really, really horrible outcomes of our culture. And we're seeing like the scope of like what we're allowed to do to raise awareness about that, or to register our discontent. How it's just being limited even more, and all we can ever do is vote. We can vote for people within the system who are ostensibly going to do the right thing, despite the decades of evidence that they're not at all going to do the right thing. I'm here for the civil discourse. Thank you, Old Dutch. Or you can participate in this sanctioned protest. You know, that doesn't go too far, that doesn't ruffle any feathers any more than it has to.
You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Oh Sorry, for the gifted sub, and thank you also to Comrade Social Distancing for the 2 gifted subs. Very much appreciated for both of you. By the way, yeah, we do have this hype train going. For some reason, I've been having a hard time like shilling lately. I don't want to dwell on this too much. It's been a lot more difficult, I feel, recently to like hit the sub goal every day. I don't like dwelling on it. I'm not good at like negging people over it. People are very, very generous that support this show, and I really do recognize that, and I don't ever want to seem not appreciative of it. It's been very tricky lately to actually hit the sub goal, though, which is making it more difficult to like do this stream. So without getting into a big spiel about this, if you enjoy the content and the community and the show, please subscribe. It's very, very helpful. And I appreciate it a lot. I guess I've been having a harder time actually like shilling and like negging people and getting people to subscribe to the show. But again, I always feel weird about this. I don't like to seem ungrateful to the very, very generous people that have been so supportive of this community. I really do appreciate it, but you know,
you can count on me.
I gotta do it. I gotta do it.
Talk you through all this.
I gotta hit that sub goal every day, or else I can't fucking do this. Thank you, DRP.
And have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for the 11 months resub at tier 2 DRP. I appreciate it. Slub to rib indeed. And thank you, Wheeze, as well, for the 6 months of tier 1. So what you're telling us is you need more structured shill breaks. Possibly. We'll see. I mean, I don't like having to do that. I would prefer not to have to do that.
Member of the Friendship Triangle.
I would prefer not to have to do that, but that's just like part and parcel of doing this shit. Thank you, Squatch Drew, for the 5 gifted subs. Squatch, I really appreciate all the support. I really, really do. Thank you. To you and the whole fam. The whole Squatch family. The lurkers could be doing more. Sorry, we have to say it. Listen, I didn't want to have to call them out. We love the lurkers as well. This man broke himself out of slub jail. We really love the stream. Thank you, Squatch. Again, all the support means a lot. It really does. I've always, this is the weirdest thing about doing this Twitch stream, is having to do this part
talk you through all
and
this.
Like getting people to subscribe. It's you know, it's kind of like dehumanizing in a way. You have to, we're here talking about fucking abortion rights, and I'm here getting people to like, oh, by the way, subscribe to my Twitch channel while we're talking about this. Thank you. Thank you, River and Ravens, for the gifted sub as well. Thank you. The crypto market has dropped by 1.6 trillion since November. This is a very real economy. It just means we need to buy the dip. What are you talking about? Thanks for the stream. Sorry, I can only support with memes right now. No problem. Of course, I understand if people are Not able to support. If you're not able to, you're not able to. Not much I can do about that. Need to crank out some Rob fan cams and stream highlights to pass around. Well, that's one thing. It's like fart party.
Count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you
Fart
through all
Party
this.
69. I guess that's the thing I've accepted as well, is that like trying to grow this channel and grow this community, it's not necessarily always going to be a straight line. I think I was feeling pretty good around January, February. I think we were consistently pulling in like 200 viewers without raids or anything. I was very consistently hitting the sub goal without really trying that much. And I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, I'm on the golden path here. And then there's been kind of a dip since then. I think people have lost interest in like the trucking convoy and the Ukraine stuff, which was pulling in a lot of interest then. So part of it is just that I have to accept that there's not this like guaranteed straight line of increased viewers and audience, and that I still do have to just be putting in the work every single day to grow this thing. Thank you, Red Scary. Thank you so much for another gifted sub.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to
Thank you, Red
talk you
Scary.
through all this.
And if you're wondering why I'm not talking about the important subject that we're supposed to be talking about, is because now I'm trying to just like take this moment to encourage people to subscribe to the channel, so I'm not trying to talk about an important issue while also constantly being interrupted by weird GIFs playing and thanking subs and stuff like that. I'm trying to get all that shit out of the way. Thank you, Sikalufakis. First gifted sub. Thank you, Sikalufakis. I appreciate that.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I think I'm going laser high producer mode. You got to watch out. Come Monday, we're going to be running a tight ship around here. We'll play some yacht rock, I guess, since it is a boat or whatever this metaphor. Thank you, Lodan.
Member of the Friendship Triangle.
Are you at all concerned that your anti-candy licking stance may have impacted your viewership? I don't know, because I think that was a popular
You've just
bit.
become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
That was a very popular bit. The anti-candy licker thing. People really enjoyed that. The blank stare when I get the big raids, and I just stare at the camera for like 5 straight minutes.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
People really enjoyed that bit. Oh my goodness. Crackleberry, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you so much. Crackle Bearer. I mixed you up with Blueberry. Thank you, Crackle Bearer, for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you so much, G Cluppy, for the 5 gifted subs as well. Thank you, G Cluppy. Thank you, Bats Crap, as well, for the 5 gifted subs.
You can
Thank
count
you,
on
Bats
me
Crap.
and have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Doc Hollywood, for the gifted sub.
You can count on me. You're gonna
Thank
have
you,
good
Doc.
old Rob to talk
Highly
you through all
valued
this.
community member as well. Thank you, Earth to Skelly, for the gifted sub as well. Thank you, Earth to Skelly. It seems to ebb and flow with the news, but you know the community has your back. Thank you, Ms. Squatch. I appreciate it. What else did I want to say here? Something else that I missed. It was sorry said. You would all wear a shirt that says TRRS is not a cult or a pyramid scheme. I know I would. We're getting merch. We are getting merch. There is merch coming. Okay? We're gonna have the best merch. It's coming very soon. We're gonna have a whole website, friendshiptriangle.com. There's gonna be really cool merch. The archive of the show can kind of live there. All kinds of great stuff. Thank you very, very much for supporting the channel and the hype train and everything, folks. I appreciate it a lot. I got it. Like, it's absolutely the worst part about doing this is like that feeling, because now it's just when I don't, the feeling of not getting to your goal is just like, it's extremely painful. It's an extremely shitty feeling. Not getting to the sub goal. And so on Friday I already felt really bad because I was like, okay, I'm gonna put in a full like 4 or 5 hour day, hit the sub goal, get the weekend started off right. And I didn't do that. So I leave the stream feeling like, fuck, am I losing it? Am I losing an audience? Or do people care anymore? So I feel shitty already. And then that stuff happened with my kid right after. That's is probably why I was in a really dark, depressing mood. Would wear the shit out of a Momo shirt. Well, we got it. Outrun designed a really great TRRS shirt that is like a college, it's like a college sports thing. The TRRS fighting Momos. All of this is coming. The think tank, the Rousseau Institute of Western Destabilization. We're going to have merch for that. We're going to have TRRS merch. It is coming, I promise. You need to become more controversial so you can grow your stream audience. Have you considered being more public about being JFK pilled? Well, maybe when I go to this Oliver Stone Q&A in a month, maybe I can come out there. I'm already pretty controversial. That's the whole reason I developed a social media following in the first place, is by being controversial. Anyway, thanks again, everyone, for contributing to the channel. In all honesty, it means a lot. I'm sorry to take this time to have to do this. I don't really enjoy doing it, frankly. I would prefer just to be able to make a salary from like the Amazon corporation who owns Twitch. Unfortunately, that's not how this shit works. And I have to encourage the little number to go up every single day, or else I can't do this. So if you're ever watching and you're like, man, this guy, all he loves, this guy cares about is people subscribing. Not true. Not true. I would rather not have to think about that, but I do. But I do have to. It's my actual job to do this, so I have to do it. But I really does mean a lot. Seriously, for everyone that contributes to this channel, thank you. Thank you. It means so much to me. Thank you. I don't ever want to seem like I am not appreciative of the very, very generous people that watch this show and are part of this community. I'm very, very appreciative. I promise you that. Most people suck at self-promotion. Well, I mean, that's something that I struggled with a long time, $0 Bill, since I've been trying to sort of make a living doing this kind of stuff. It's one thing that Twitch kind of makes it easier. That's why I've had an easier time on Twitch figuring out how to make this work than I did using Patreon and other things, doing podcasting. Because in Twitch, it's kind of gamified in a certain way that makes it easy. It makes it easy to sort of do that, but it's still dehumanizing. It's dehumanizing to be like, please subscribe to my channel, please. I know there's like a million important things you could be spending your money on right now, but like, can you buy a subs? You know? All this guy cares about is making enough money to eat and feed Momo her special food. I mean, help support Momo's sensitive tummy food. Yeah. It's okay to participate in society, and that includes shilling for subs on your Twitch channel. I guess. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess so. I do feel weird about it. I do feel weird about it. Like I've said before, I mean, the whole last year of doing this show, I was able to make a little bit of money from it, which was like cool. But really, it's just since the beginning of this year, when I started saying like, okay, I'm going to start treating this like it's my actual job, and I'm going to do this every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm going to actually try to like turn this into a real job. It is like the first time in a while that I've felt like, oh my God, I'm actually like somewhat financially stable and I'm not constantly stressed about money. Not that I'm not, but it's like it's been alleviated ever so slightly. And that really does mean a lot to me that I'm able to do that. I feel a little weird all the time. Anyway, most of us probably have more evil jobs than you. No big deal. Not me, of course. Poor non-G Clubby. It's also okay to be dignified about it too for those that can. You're just reminding people to buy the ticket if they take the ride. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, Lodane. Again, I know it can be like some people, the way they go about this stuff is to be kind of like to like neg people over it, which I understand. I've tried to go down that path before, but I just always feel weird about that. I always feel very weird about it. Exactly, the Expo sponsorship's still going strong. Anyway, that's enough time talking about this. Let's move on now and go back to our original discussion of what we're talking about. This question of what is legitimate protest. I work in the PR department at Northrop Grumman. No, FinDom is not my thing. I mean, if there was any community members that were into that kind of thing, I mean, we could talk about it, maybe off stream. If that was like your thing, you were into that. I'm just saying I could probably figure it out. But I wouldn't automatically lump everyone into that category. Okay, where was I? Now I've got to get back on track here. So overall, this is what has started this question. You know, what's legitimate protest? And this idea, the way that our culture fetishizes this idea of nonviolent protest as the only possible acceptable form of displaying your discontent about politics and policy or the economy or these issues like what is happening right now with abortion rights, with trans rights, with everything. The only acceptable form of airing your grievances about any of these things is an officially announced, designated free speech zone, non-violent protest. And that's the only thing that's ever acceptable. And anything that goes outside that scope makes some people very, very uncomfortable. Turns out the government loves that style of protest. Well, and then that's part of it as well. It's like all we can do is air our grievances and create awareness, right? And make sure that we're pressuring our elected officials. And that's all we're really allowed to do. And vote. Vote to change. We can vote to change who the elected officials are, and we can engage in this kind of non-violent protest in these designated areas to let our elected officials know that we feel passionately about something, and that's all. That's all we're allowed to do. So we can take a look at some of the responses to this. And let's look at one more time. Let's look at this terrifying scene outside of Brett Kavanaugh's home. This is the terrifying scene that so many people were up in arms over.
We will not go back. I see you, buddy. We will not go back. We will not go back. We will not go back. We will not go back.
Okay. So let's take a look at some of the responses to this. Oh, sorry. I had one other thing that I wanted to talk about. sorry, and then we're gonna do the serious thing. I just saw this video and I was like, this is what this guy here is like. I saw this clip and I was thinking about what the guy was saying in this clip. Listen, he's like, why are you spending all your time on that Twitch channel? I've looked at our credit card receipts. Why are you subscribing to that Twitch channel? Why are you spending all your time with these folks? Don't you care about me? Which that should be the reaction. What is this twitch.tv/Rob Rousseau? Why are you spending all your time in this community? We never talk anymore. Don't subscribe anymore. I looked at your credit card statements. No, please, no more gifted subs. Don't gift subs to Rob Rousseau anymore. To the TRRS community. Sorry. Okay. Garley's not worth it. That's what I want everyone's reaction to be when you have someone in your family. When you have someone in your family that's asking you about this kind of stuff. So let's look at some of the reactions to this this really scary protest outside of Justice Kavanaugh's home. From Peter Savodnik from Vanity Fair, Tablet, and Guardian, who wrote a book apparently about Lee Harvey Oswald inside the Soviet Union. So this guy's a deeply committed to the deep state ideology. Seems to be. Probably doesn't even admit that Lee Harvey Oswald was a spook. Probably a spook himself, this guy. It's my wife's birthday today and I'm here with you all, so this could be us. Just kidding, she's working right now like I'm supposed to be. She says, it's not a cult, it's a friendship triangle. You're telling me how to gift my subs? Thank you. So Peter Savodnik says, the reason you don't protest in front of any official's house is it's a form of proto-violence. Ooh, a form of proto-violence, a thinly veiled threat that is inherently anti-democratic. This applies even to justices with retrograde views. And look, you know what's not a form of proto-violence? You know what's not a form of proto-violence is taking away reproductive rights from millions of people. Again, this is a decision that will result in the deaths of human beings. Women and anyone else that needs to access abortion, they will die as a result. Whether it's as a result of medical complications that they need abortions to resolve, or going outside an official safe environment to get an abortion. People will die. That's not proto-violence. That's actual violence. That's real violence. Or when you talk about anything, it's because we're not just talking about abortion rights. When you're talking about this assault on trans rights, that's going to result in dead trans teens and trans people of all ages. That's actual violence. When you talk about the continuing degradation of the climate, right? Which the judiciary in the United States and elsewhere has been rubber stamping now for decades. Rubber stamping the complete corporate ownership of everything that has led this like unbridled capitalism that is destroying our planet. That is actual violence that's going to result in millions or perhaps billions of deaths. That's not proto-violence. That's real, actual violence. Also not proto-violence is the actions taken on the part of forced birth advocates, which I mentioned before, assassinating abortion doctors, firebombing abortion clinics. There was a mass shooting at an abortion clinic a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember. Actual violence. That's not proto-violence. That's not some abstract concept. That's not some thinly veiled threat like this man is saying. That's actual, real violence. And Peter Savodnik is here talking about protesting outside someone's house as a form of proto-violence. All the lib moms in front of Brett's house were pretty chill and not looking violent at all, just saying, of course, Squatch. And like, even I was saying, like, one of the things that came out from that protest was that his actual neighbors were involved in like organizing it. So it's like not even like these radical protesters or anything. They're not communists. They're literally wealthy suburbanites that are just disgusted by the people that they live around. I remember when I was 10 on Harvard Street in Toronto, one of Morgenthaler's clinics was bombed. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. There's been a decades-long campaign of actual violence, real violence, that has led to this moment. Not proto-violence, but actual terrorism. He cares about proto-violence of protesters against those in institutions who are inflicting real violence against millions of people every day. Fuck out of here, idiot doesn't know what violence is. And this is the point that we need to keep driving home too when we talk about social murder and what constitutes violence. And even when we talk about possible political solutions, that includes concepts of violence. That makes people very uncomfortable. It can even make people at Twitch uncomfortable. They can even banish you from the platform for even discussing about this. And while I would never use this platform to advocate for any kind of violence, of course, obviously, but we should, though, continue to examine this concept of violence and what that means, and who's allowed to use violence as part of a political project, and who isn't. Obviously, the people that are average citizens are not able to use violence. And of course, unless you're a pro-forced birth person, in which case your movement can use violence with total impunity. And anyone who commits this violence will be hand waved away as being some kind of like lone wolf, while the movement that benefits from it continues on unabated. So of course that's not so bad. But examining the concept of whose violence and state violence and social murder. When you have a protest, when you have a legitimate protest, and the police come in, armed police, either like local police or part of DHS or Homeland Security, and they roll in and start beating the shit out of protesters, guess what? That's violence. That's violence happening on the part of the state to non-violent official protesters engaging in their sacred right of non-violent protest. Right? Banning abortion is violence. Legislating trans people out of existence is violence. Destroying the planet is violence. Putting immigrants in concentration camps is violence. Imperialism is violence. Upholding our whole global economic system at gunpoint and overthrowing governments in the global south and instituting mass murder and torture programs in order to maintain a very specific economic system. Yeah, guess what? That's violence also. Our whole system is upheld by violence. Our whole system is predicated on violence. This non-stop cycle of violence. Putting human beings into a fucking giant meat grinder and churning it and churning up profit at the other end of that. Our whole system is violent. But any kind of violence that threatens this status quo, which again is upheld entirely by violence, it's upheld at with the threat of violence, it's upheld at gunpoint, and any form of protest that threatens that in any way gets framed by dipshits like Peter here as this kind of dangerous proto-violence, this dangerous and unacceptable and uncivil act. That's one thing that we all individually and collectively need to be constantly re-examining. This idea of violence and who's allowed to commit violence and who's not. It's not about reproductive rights, but I think this Angela Davis quote is very telling about this, because we can talk about It's not just about reproductive justice. It's about civil rights. It's about, again, trans rights, reproductive rights, the climate, social justice, racial justice.
Yeah, but the question is more, how do you get there? Do you get there by confrontation, violence?
Oh, is that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
See, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions. If you are a black person and live in the black community all your life and walk out on the street every day seeing white policemen surrounding you, when I was living in Los Angeles, for instance, long before the situation in LA ever occurred, I was constantly stopped. No, the police didn't know who I was, but I was a black woman, and I had a natural, and they, I suppose, thought that I might be a, quote, militant. And when you live under a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. Whether I approve of guns. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. Some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment we might expect to be attacked. The man who was at that time in complete control of the city government, his name was Bull Connor, would often get on the radio and make statements like, niggers have moved into a white neighborhood, we better expect some bloodshed tonight. And sure enough, there would be bloodshed. After the 4 young girls who lived, one of them lived next door to me. I was very good friends with the sister of another one. My sister was very good friends with all 3 of them. My mother taught one of them in her class. My mother, in fact, when the bombing occurred, one of the mothers of one of the young girls called my mother and said, can you take me down to the church to pick up Carol? We heard about the bombing, and I don't have my car. And they went down, and what did they find? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. And then after that, in my neighborhood, all of the men organized themselves into an armed patrol. They had to take their guns and patrol our community every night because they did not want that to happen again. I mean, that's why when someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible. Because what it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through, what black people have experienced in this country since the time the first black person was kidnapped from the shores of Africa.
Yeah, but the
This is what is so annoying about the anti-gun leftists saying that guns are no match for the militarized police, as if you don't have to defend yourself from whipped-up racist mobs who act with complete impunity. Yeah. Seriously. You know who else was like drastically outmanned and outgunned as well was the people of Vietnam, and from the years 1965 to 1975 as well. They're still able to get some stuff done. That's neither here nor there. Anyway, I think it's important to watch this clip as well, because this is all related. Like, it's all related to the battle for reproductive rights. But it's all part of this question of what is legitimate protest. Because I wanted to talk also about the George Floyd protests and how conservatives have somehow managed to take those George Floyd protests, and anytime any of this stuff comes up, they'll talk about all the cities that were burned. You supported these cities being burned. All these cities in America and all this kind of chaos. That is those months of chaos. And we talk about violence. You talk about violence, and they'll turn to that and be like, that was violent protest. To say nothing of the way that, again, because who has the monopoly on violence? We saw time and time again throughout those George Floyd protests. Armed police, heavily armed police, basically armored with like fucking as total stormtroopers coming in and escalating nonviolent protests to violence and to violent protests. We saw this endless flow of footage of violent cops throughout those protests. But also, one thing that I think has been lost, and Democrats have, of course, and liberals have, of course, allowed this to happen. One thing that's been totally lost here is why those protests were going on in the first place, right? And it wasn't just about one individual. It was, there was one spark that set off this wave of protest, but it wasn't just about George Floyd. It wasn't about one individual, but it was about this situation that black people have been living in since the foundation of the United States, where you have what armed agents of the state are just able to murder with full impunity. Again, you have in various U.S. states, you have the death penalty. Some places have the death penalty, some don't. There's different rules about who can be put to death and whatnot. This depends on what state you're in. Of course, there's some states where this is, because of decades of activism, this has been made illegal, etc., or you don't have this ability. But the fact is, there is the death penalty in every single state in the United States because there's a police force in every single state that have full legal right to just murder at any point. And this disproportionately affects black people, but it affects everyone as well. It's certainly not only black people that are killed by the police, disproportionately, yes. But you have this system where police are just able to arbitrarily murder citizens in the street at any time for any moment that they feel slightly threatened in any way. They have full legal impunity to just murder on the spot, with very, very rare exceptions, And that's what those protests were about. So when they get framed as being like violent protests, it's like there were protests against violence. They're like, that's actually a reason for people to be violent. That's a reason for people to riot, to voice their opposition to this endless legal right that the state has to just murder people in the street. And of course, Democrats have just given into this framing. They're fucking terrified of anything like that kicking off again. That's why they try to proclaim some victory by one killer cop actually having consequences. And they wore the kente cloth or whatever. And of course, now they're just like bending over backwards to give more and more money to police. So they can never be, no one can ever suggest that they're anti-police or that they don't support this like endless right for police to just murder people in the street. Most police are undereducated with a gang mentality of free pass to kill. I mean, it's literally gangs. Like, I don't know if you saw that story the other day, but there's some deputy in, I believe in California, who was like on a camping trip, and they all get these like gang tattoos, and he got the wrong tattoo somehow, and they literally shot him in the ankle. Like his own colleagues shot him in the ankle where he got this inappropriate gang tattoo. Like, it's literally just death squads. It's armed reactionary death squads, which it's just been totally normalized for them to just have this limitless legal power to murder in the street. And again, I'll say it again, like, regardless of what your actual law about the death penalty is, It doesn't matter whether it's the death penalty is legal or illegal, because even when you get accused of a crime, you go to court, you have a lawyer, you have a jury, they decide whether you deserve the death penalty or not. You can appeal. There's a whole process in place. But when you've outsourced when you've made every single fucking asshole cop on the street, given them full legal power to be judge, jury, and executioner in any moment, with the ability to murder, guess what? Your death penalty rules don't matter, because there's the death penalty in every single state where these people exist, which is everywhere. And people will still talk about these protests that took place and suggest that they were violent protests because, like, there was vandalism. There was vandalism in some cases. So it asks this question of, like, what's legitimate protest and what isn't? Who's allowed to use violence and who is not? That example of, like, racial justice is the ultimate example, I think, of the way that the state wields this perpetual, inexhaustible right to commit violence against citizens. And any response to that is not legitimate. Any response except polite, quiet, civil, non-violent protests, which we saw time and time again, even in those protests, was still not acceptable. Which would time and time again, each night, be escalated into violence by armed police officers coming in and assaulting these protesters. So I think we need to start asking ourselves these questions, like, why is this the only legitimate form of protest? You know, and what is that actually changing? Do we have the actual ability to change things by engaging in this kind of polite, respectful protest? And it certainly seems like that's one way to guarantee that nothing will ever actually change. I mean, those George Floyd protests are the ultimate example of this, considering the ways that was the largest coordinated protest movement of its kind, either in American history or certainly in decades, and it resulted in no change. It resulted in one killer cop getting consequences and zero systemic change, and in fact the problem just continuing to get worse of these police departments getting more and more endless funds from the United States government. And in fact, any suggestion that should change in any way has been now demonized and made to be, you know, illegitimate. Oh yeah, we got FDR 2.0. Yeah, that's right. In that he's super racist, then yes. Ferguson was pretty big too. Absolutely. And talk about violence. Was it violence when all the main radical organizers of those protests ended up dead in burned out cars with no evidence of what happened to them, or no ever real effort to figure out what happened when it comes to Ferguson or these George Floyd protests? Dozens of examples of this, of charismatic protest leaders that were just arbitrarily assassinated. That's also violence. When you assassinate protest leaders, that is also violence. You know? I've talked before about how this system has been put in place because, of course, people like, you know, Malcolm X, people like MLK, people like Kwame Ture were correctly viewed as being dangerous, as being people that were dangerous to the status quo, or Fred Hampton, and who were taken out as a result of that, of being that level of threat to the status quo, which is again violence. And how this whole system has been put in place since then, this like through the drug war, through this increased militarization of police, to ensure that no one ever gets to become a Malcolm X anymore. Now, before you even get an opportunity to become Malcolm X, you end up in jail or you end up dead in the street before you can ever achieve that level of influence. Love it when the liberal media appoints itself the spokesperson and vessel through which the masses speak to the ruling class. And so that's it. So that's the question. You know, who's violence? Who's allowed to use violence and who isn't? What's legitimate protest and what isn't? And as we're seeing from a lot of these, the reaction to the very mild protests outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house, you'll see that it's never legitimate. There's no actual response to this stuff that's going to be deemed legitimate. You know, it's not legitimate to smash windows or burn buildings. It's not legitimate to protest outside of people's houses. It's certainly not legitimate to ever advocate for any kind of violence, which is not something that I would ever do, obviously, here on Twitch, of course. That's not legitimate. The only thing that's legitimate is this very safe, sanitized, non-violent protest, which doesn't bother anybody all that much and is kept to this specific area where you can put small amounts of pressure on elected officials, and beyond that you can vote, and that's the only legitimate response to any of this stuff. Yeah, I remember we talked about that a couple weeks ago, Red Scary, with Bill Clinton at John Lewis's funeral. Just disgusting man. Disgusting man who directly contributed to the, mass enslavement of millions of black people while simultaneously claiming to speak for those communities. In addition to not only expanding the carceral system, but destroying the welfare system too, which predominantly affected black people also, which is also violence. Destroying the welfare system is violence. So going back to this, the actual issue at hand of abortion rights and the response to that. This is truly amazing. This response from the actual administration. POTUS strongly believes, here's Jen Psaki, dropping another patented Psaki bomb. POTUS strongly believes in the constitutional right to protest, but not so fast, though. Not so fast. But that should never include violence, threats, or vandalism. Judges perform an incredibly important function in our society, and they must be able to do their jobs without concern for their personal safety. So there's that word again, violence. And I will say again, when you're talking about taking away the right to an abortion, destroying reproductive rights for millions of people, that's violence. That is violence. In addition, austerity, mass incarceration, this attack on reproductive rights, the attack on trans rights. This is all explicit violence. It's not some metaphorical form of possible theoretical proto-violence. It's actual real violence that actually harms real people. It's not some threat. It's not some threat, some artificial idea. It's very real violence that harms real people. Jen Psaki worked doing PR for a Zionist surveillance company. Yeah, I know that, and now she's going to, of course, join the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party at MSNBC. It's also sickening too. Are the new press secretary is taking over, who's Haitian? She's a Haitian immigrant and a gay woman, and they're holding that up as being this amazing accomplishment, while literally the Joe Biden administration has been ramping up its deportations of Haitian people, deporting people back to Haiti, which is an incredibly destabilized environment, specifically because of United States meddling in the Haitian government and destroying these possible revolutionary movements. So we're supposed to celebrate a gay Haitian woman becoming press secretary while Haitians are being fucking brutalized by this very administration, which is what? Violence. You know, when you destabilize another government because they want to increase the minimum wage by 50 cents an hour, and all the corporations that rely on the cheap labor there pressure you to overthrow the government and install a puppet government. And then that creates riots and widespread gang violence and destabilization. Guess what? That's violence. And then you force immigrants to go back there that are trying to flee that violence. You force them on back onto the plane and send them back there. That's violence. Yeah, and Joy Reed said, revolutions are not a good thing in Haiti. Yeah. It depends on for whom. That's right. It wasn't good for the slave owners. And yeah, technically, you could make the argument that revolution was not good for Haiti, considering the colonizer countries penalized them for generations for overthrowing the slave state in Haiti. But like, that's not an argument against revolution. That's an argument against colonialism, Joy. It wasn't the revolutionaries that were at fault there. It was the fucking evil colonialists that you work for. Yeah, whipping Haitians and sending them back to Haiti using Trump's COVID laws, but at least we have a Haitian press secretary. What an amazing accomplishment. Yeah. Considering the bank Citibank became rich off the gold Haiti paid for 3 value of the slaves they freed. You know who else was fucking spouting his mouth about this? Paul Begala. Paul Begala. Of course, this motherfucker, Paul Begala, has an I voted sticker on his bald head. No offense to the bald, okay? I have nothing wrong with being bald. But Paul Begala with this shit-eating grin and the fucking I voted sticker on his head could not be more emblematic of exactly the type of person who is now weighing in on this. Because this is not some ordinary asshole. Paul Begala is not some ordinary West Wing fetishizing white liberal. Literally, who first of all is still talked to for his like expertise on politics. In the year 2022, this motherfucker has not actually been part of a winning election in 30 years. Since 1992 was the last time this man was actually relevant, but he is still someone that gets to collect a paycheck advising politicians and opining on the issues of the day. And who did this man work for in 1992? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. And another of the long list of Democratic administrations that failed to enshrine abortion rights and make them alleviate people that rely on reproductive rights and need access to abortions, ensuring that this knife would be constantly dangling over their throats for the next 3 decades, so Democrats could fundraise off it. You know, Bill Clinton, who committed his, as we've already talked about, committed his own share of violence. Social murder abroad and actual murder, the social murder domestically and imperialist murder abroad. Paul Begala. The I voted sticker on the head is just perfect. Who says this is wrong, stupid, potentially dangerous, and politically counterproductive. Paul Begala. Author of You're Fired, The Perfect Guide for Beating Donald Trump. So they did a really great job beating Donald Trump. Definitely someone that should be taken seriously. His advice on politics. Counselor to President Clinton. Wrong, stupid, potentially dangerous, and politically counterproductive. It's counterproductive to protest outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house. What's not counterproductive? Voting for Democrats. Vote. You just got to vote. Vote for more Democrats and you won't be able to do this. Regardless, let's not pay attention to any of the previous Democratic administrations that failed to act on this, that have led people to this moment. Let's not worry about that. Let's just make sure we're delegitimizing any form of protest over this that is not this very safe, respectable, sanctioned form of protest that doesn't actually threaten anything in the status quo. He's Ian Cooper. He's actually doing the face. He's doing the lib face in the fucking in his image. He might be the inventor of the lib face. It really does look like it. So right, this is the question though, isn't it? This is the question about legitimate protest. You know, what's protest that's not wrong and stupid and potentially dangerous and politically counterproductive? And the reality is, and I'm not just saying this to be edgy, the reality is, elected officials or unelected robe-wearing wise justices that get to determine these things, or members of the corporate class, which have directly contributed to our society just continually getting worse and worse, that have brought the planet to the brink of destruction, who engage in imperialist wars, in campaigns of mass murder, who take away reproductive rights, who take away trans rights. The reality is, these people should feel threatened. I think a lot of these folks, the ruling class, feel entirely too safe and feel entirely too comfortable making these decisions that affect the lives or end lives for millions and millions of people. They feel entirely too comfortable that there will never, ever be any consequences for that. That's something that I'm hoping will, in fact, change over the next couple of years. I think people making this threat should not feel safe. They shouldn't feel comfortable and safe in their own homes. It's also because, like, this is not the first example of this. Like, if you'll recall, this is something I've been paying very close attention to ever since I started sort of podcasting and doing this kind of commentary, is seeing this cycle. And you can count on this like clockwork, the way these news cycles work, where there's a big outrage about something. Right now it's reproductive rights and abortion rights, obviously. But if you'll recall, at the beginning of the Trump administration, or close to the beginning, when there's this big outrage, this big news cycle about the Trump administration's, the way that they're treating migrants, specifically migrant children, and this family separation policy. Remember all the outrage about that? There was and to their credit, people in American media talked about this pretty clearly. There was this whole news cycle about the deliberate cruelty that the Trump administration was inflicting on these children, right? There was that audio clip that was released of like the children at these immigration facilities crying, and like one of these fucking DHS or Border Patrol guys just like openly mocking and laughing at them. And very naturally, as it should, that incited a lot of popular outrage and protest. And this is what happens time and time again. I watched this news cycle play out like fucking clockwork for years, where this outrage will build because of this very real thing that the state is doing to harm people, whether it's immigrant children, whether it's black people being killed by police, whether it's trans people being legislated out of existence or directly targeted by anti-trans legislation, whether it's abortion rights being under threat. And there's a news cycle about these real threats and the people being harmed by that. it incites a backlash, and then there's an entire news cycle afterwards, which is what we're getting into right now, about the very uncivil actions of these protesters. And if you'll remember, after these stories came out about these immigrant children, the very next thing that happened in the news cycle was Trump press secretary Sarah Sanders was politely asked to leave a Red Hen chicken restaurant because of her role in this administration. And then there's an entire news cycle of conservatives and Republicans saying like, oh my goodness, can you believe how outrageous it is that people are being so uncivil and rude to Trump administration officials? And then there's a whole news. Then of course the liberals in the media have to pick up on that, and they have to say, is things going too far? What is legitimate protest? It's kind of too much, isn't it? When you have people being accosted in restaurants and asked to leave restaurants. I believe Ted Cruz was yelled at in a restaurant one time by DSA folks, and that was a big thing. Well, you can't yell at people in restaurants. Like, what are we coming to? Time and time again, this is how this news cycle works. You have this very legitimate phenomenon that inspires waves of outrage, and then immediately, again, like fucking clockwork, time and time again, 1 week later, you can set your clocks to this. An entire news cycle about, is the protest going too far? Is the protest getting too uncivil? And that's exactly what the next week of discourse in mainstream media is going to be like when it comes to this.
Owner of the Red Hen restaurant who kicked out Sarah Sanders from her establishment, she's now speaking out, saying, and I quote, "I'm not a huge fan of confrontation." Could have fooled me. "I have a business and I want the business to thrive. This feels like the moment in our democracy when people have to make uncomfortable actions and decisions to uphold their morals." Well, breaking right now, it has been confirmed that Red Hen owner Stephanie Wilkinson has resigned from her position with Main Street, Lexington. My next guest is a Cuban-American restaurant owner who praised President Trump's tax plan back in May.
Cuban-American.
Having come from a country that promised everything and only delivered misery, I knew that 8 years of promoting appeasement, apologies, and entitlement was taking us down a path of no return. Government helps small businesses by letting us do our jobs and getting out of the way, by unleashing the American spirit.
I think the politicians are being beaten today.
What the fuck is that?
All right, she owns 11 restaurants, and she says President Trump's
owns
people,
11
including him,
restaurants.
they're welcome at all of them. Irina Villarino joins me right now. Irina, that's nice. But here's my question. Would you welcome Hillary Clinton as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not my place to determine what customers come into my restaurant. I'm here to serve food, not to promote my political ideology. I do that on my own time.
In other words, business is business, politics is politics,
Absolutely.
and maybe just keep them separate.
For sure.
What do you think of this woman? And we mentioned that she's resigned from her position at the local business council there. Perhaps because, well, I won't explain. I want you to. Why do you think maybe other local business owners don't want to be associated with her right now, given the situation?
And liberals can't help but fall for this time and time again.
It's morally incorrect. It's un-American. And as a business owner, it's just not savvy. It's not smart to isolate half of your potential customers. But other than that, I mean, you could disagree with the current administration. That is your right. But Sarah Sanders is a decent person with whom she may have a disagreement with as far as politics is concerned. I don't think that justifies her kicking her out of her restaurant. I think it's completely un-American. I mean, I came to this country when I was 4 years old, and I remember politics was never spoken in social and in business arena, and I think we need to.
I mean, if you're a small business owner, don't you have the right to fucking not serve people if you don't want to?
The politics, it's invading every aspect of our lives, and
isn't that like the most American thing you can do?
Have a Trump hat or a Hillary.
And notice
hat
notice the obfuscation. Oh, it's just politics, right? Or this abortion stuff. Well, you're taking the politics and you're making it personal, but it's not just politics. It's violence. This is the problem, right? Putting little kids in jail because they're trying to immigrate to the country is violence. Separating them from their parents, that's violence. And everything gets shunted into this like, oh, it's just politics. It has no relation. And so it's like, it's violence to ask Sarah Sanders to leave a restaurant, but it's not violence to put little kids in jail and have them be abused by these fucking fascist DHS guys. It's not violence to take away reproductive rights from millions of people, which, as we pointed out, will result in people dying. Absolutely. But it's violence to protest outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house. All these gusanos who came over as toddlers know so much about Castro's evil regime. Yeah, now where'd you get the money to purchase 11 restaurants, I wonder? I wonder what your fucking parents were doing prior to Castro taking over. And I think it opens up another question as well, which is like with the utility of protest. And you got to wonder why all activism is being funneled into this direction of acceptable protest. Well, it's done precisely because it's not a threat in any way to the status quo. And this is something we are going to have to reckon with, right? Especially as we continue into this decade and all these issues get worse. Whether you're talking about climate, the things I've been mentioning, the climate, the assault on trans rights, the assault on abortion rights, continual state violence on the part of the police, mass incarceration, all these things. We are going to have to eventually realize that protesting and asking our elected officials to maybe think about doing better is not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough to actually change anything. Voting is not going to be enough to actually change it. Obviously, it should be clear by now to everyone that if you feel like there needs to be drastic change to our economic system or to our culture, it's not going to happen through voting. And it's not going to happen either in this framework of non-violent, officially sanctioned, designated protest. Acceptable protest makes me think of the cage they get the logging protesters to demonstrate from on Arrested Development. Marina was mentioning that as well.
The next day, Lindsay, having heard about a military exercise, joined a protest group and went off to exercise her own First Amendment rights.
This way. Thank you. Right here. This way. I'd ask you to make sure you're fully inside the free speech zone before beginning your protest.
Free speech zone? This is where we're protesting? This isn't right. Where are the cameras?
They're in the free press zone, and if you could save your comments until you're completely loaded into the cage.
Well, at least a procession will come through here. They'll see us protest.
Actually, they're using their right to cut through the lemon grove.
Okay, have fun. Enjoy your right to free speech. The armed forces welcomes your dissent.
Well, hopefully somebody will come by with a protest.
I think that was Neelix. I was wondering where I recognized that guy. That was Neelix. And the guy with the long hair was the guidance counselor in Freaks and Geeks. Can't remember the name of the character. We love our free speech, don't we? Ooh, I see the new Avatar teaser trailer just dropped. That's exciting. But let's finish up talking about this. Now that I'm hyped by Avatar. Buy our premium free speech passes soon, only $15,000. You can protest from the basement of the Smithsonian. That's nice. That's very nice. But frankly, we do have to reevaluate this. I think about, the climate justice movement, some of those big protests that we saw. Right close to the pandemic. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. And I'm thinking about, the Kwame Ture talk about organization versus mobilization. And this is something we've talked about a lot on the show. This mass mobilization, going back a couple decades now. And we can talk about the endless mobilizations from the WTO protests in the late 90s to the Iraq War protests to Occupy Wall Street, student protests in Quebec and the UK, the Bernie Sanders movement, the George Floyd protests. Right? There's been endless mobilizations. We're talking millions and millions of people. And it's resulted in everything just continue just barreling along on that reactionary path. Like now look around what we're seeing. We're seeing the rise of fascism. We're seeing all these what we took for granted as kind of fundamental rights being taken away from people. We're seeing gay rights being rolled back. We're seeing, I think there's more. Where's the... Let me see if I can find this. Like, think about that climate protest from a few years ago. Hundreds of thousands of people all across Canada and North America, all across the world. Millions of people. Earth's CO2 hits highest recorded level in human history. All of these mass mobilizations have meant nothing. Have meant less than nothing. Again, like Squatch is pointing out, with the George Floyd protests, as we talked about, resulted in more money to the police departments. So we are going to have to start reevaluating what our strategy is. When it comes to any of these issues, any of these social justice issues, environmental justice, economic justice, anything that people have been mobilizing over. Obviously, this form of safe, non-violent protests that our liberal friends love to fetishize are not getting the job done. It's not actually resulting in any change. And that's something that I think we all need to internalize as we move into this decade and all these issues get even worse. And especially when it comes to the climate, we realize how close we are to this, if we're even if we're not already past this moment, this no going back, this point of no return when it comes to the climate. The scientists are saying we have literally a few more years left to drastically cut the amount of emissions. Well, we've had years and years of mobilizations. We've had years and years of being seen and heard on the part of the liberal establishment. And here's where we're at with the Earth's CO2, the highest level in human history. We've talked a lot about, the trucker convoy. We've talked about January 6th. And I think the tricky thing that happens here is when you have, we've talked about our patriotic socialist friends, right? Who are saying we need to support these movements. We need to support the January 6th movement. We need to support the trucker convoy. Because they're at least engaging in something beyond this kind of safe form of protest. They're against the United States government, which we don't like. They're against the Canadian government, which we don't like. We should be supporting this. We should always remember how fascism is a false revolution. That's why we don't need to support the January 6th movement or the trucker convoy. These fascists who are literally engaging in this kind of revolutionary activity or rhetoric in an effort to make things even worse for everybody. Who want to make our society more fascist than it already is. Who are astroturfed by very wealthy people. Peter Thiel or whoever else are astroturfing these movements specifically to, enact their own agenda, which is not a revolutionary agenda. It's entrenching the status quo that is beneficial to them even more, but giving people the sense that there's some kind of revolutionary moment that they're part of. So that's not a sign that we should support these proto-fascist movements, even if they're engaging in subversive activity against governments we don't like. But I think one thing we should do is we should take a look at some of these strategies that have been being employed, whether you talk about January 6th or the trucker convoy. And I think if we're talking about any of these issues, which have resulted in these kinds of mobilizations over the last couple of decades, again, climate justice, reproductive justice, trans rights, systemic racism, all of these things that have mobilized millions of people but have led to no change. I do think we have to start taking a look at some of these strategies and forget about this idea of protest as being just a way to pressure our elected officials. Right? Our elected officials who are in place to ensure that this system carries on more or less as it is. And I think what all these movements need, is a mobilization that is not based in pressuring elected officials, but is based in the fundamental idea that we don't accept the legitimacy of the government, of any of this stuff, any of these laws. We don't recognize it as being legitimate. And we're not here to pressure elected officials. We're not here to negotiate. We're not here to raise awareness. We're not here to maybe add some kind of push along some kind of incremental reform. We're literally here to register that we don't accept any of this as being legitimate in any way. Hello, really chill guy. What's up? How's the yapping going? It's going okay. I'm not as sick anymore, so I'm able to do this without, going into big coughing fits. I just saw this amazing discussion thread on Substack. I would recommend everyone clicking on that link. This is an important discussion. This is part of the discussion that we're having today. Are you being properly deferential to the people ruining society? This is the question. I encourage everyone to participate in this discussion. But that's the main thing that I feel like we need to internalize, is that all of this activity and activism gets funneled into nonviolent protests, and it gets funneled into voting for liberals, precisely because that's not a threat to any of the status quo. As much as I understand the impulse to flail against the system, even if it's impotently, I really don't see the point of protesting in a Supreme Court justice's house unless you're willing to burn it down. Well, I mean, that's the thing, Cool Jay, is like, I don't think anyone engaging in that protest over the weekend was willing to do that. But I do think there's a big difference between these kind of like safe protests at designated free speech zones. I do think it's really important that people making these decisions at the highest level of our society start to feel uncomfortable and, dare I say, unsafe. Because it just should be clear to everyone that like voting I'm not that precious about this. Like, I know that there's things that can be changed by voting for good people. There's people that are trying to work within the system in order to do good things. I respect that. But in terms of these big systemic issues that we're talking about, we do need to just basically understand this concept that these things are not going to change or get better by voting for good people. Even if you believe in this idea of, like, if you take the Democratic Party for an example and say we're going to keep on voting for really progressive people, and the more of those people that enter the party, the more influence they're able to have, and then eventually they're going to get to this point where they can influence the Democratic Party to be a good party instead of a bad party. And it's like, I don't even think that that's really wrong-headed on its face. But the reality is, we're talking about a decades-long project there. And when you talk about the climate, just when you take the climate, right? If you're just looking at the climate, we don't have this kind of time. We don't have the next 30 years to vote for the certain progressive people to get to the point where they can actually finally wield influence within the party. To say nothing of what has been going on for the previous several decades, right? This is going on endlessly. This has been going on for years and years and years. Where have things actually gone? Right? There's been progressives voting for progressive people in the United States government or in the Canadian government for now decades and decades. Things have only just continued to get worse. You know? And we're still talking about decades from now, the idea to actually wield influence within these big major parties, these liberal parties. Whether it's the Democratic Party or the Liberal Party or the NDP or the Labour Party or whoever. And we've seen time and time again that in this process, people end up inevitably being changed by the system rather than changing it from within, no matter how great their intentions are. And I know that I think there's wonderful people that have been engaged in this project of like change from within. Overall, though, we're just seeing this constant slide. That's been my whole lifetime. We've seen this constant slide to the right. To the point now where the planet is almost, our whole biosphere is almost destroyed. We have gay and trans people's rights being rolled back. We've got reproductive rights being just arbitrarily taken away from people. You know, when is it gonna be enough where we say like, okay, well, we can't do this kind of incremental project anymore? And when are we going to recognize that this process of non-violent protest, which is fetishized by the liberal class, is not actually doing anything to change any of these things meaningfully whatsoever? And like, I'm not claiming that I have the answers or the solutions about this, or that I'm going to like organize some big answer to that. I mean, I've not ever organized a fucking thing in my life. Except some independent media stuff that some people enjoy watching. But I'm trying to think about a movement on the scale of the climate movement that we've seen over the last couple of years, which has involved hundreds of thousands of people marching. A movement like that's based in a militancy, that's based in making itself a threat to the established order, to the ruling class, that doesn't march as a way to raise awareness or influence elected officials, but to like present themselves as a legitimate threat to the power that they have. Like Kwame says, nonviolence is a tactic, not a principle, and it's one that only works when your enemy has a conscience. And as we've seen, people fetishize MLK Jr. for that kind of form of nonviolence, which was a tactic, which is something that is like he was also starting to re-examine, I think, towards the end of his life. We know exactly why he's become a sort of safe figure for liberals to fetishize for exactly this reason. And what happened to MLK Jr.? What happened to MLK? And his tactic of nonviolence for all the amazing, wonderful things that he accomplished. You know? Liberals think their protests in the 60s accomplished anything, not that the VC won and the drafted army was defecting. Yeah. Well, I mean, people like Joe Biden love talking about that kind of stuff, right? That's when he says, like, when he talks about millennials, I have no sympathy for it. We just went out and marched for civil rights, Jack. We ended the war, Jack. Like, they actually think this. They actually think that they had some impact on that. And again, we talk about the civil rights movement. And, you know, while that did result in a lot of necessary reforms, absolutely, what happened right after? With the drug war and the era of mass incarceration and police militarization. Right? Because that wasn't militantly organized. It was a series of mass mobilizations that then folded as soon as they got these ostensible reforms that they wanted, which were then, of course, rendered completely meaningless by the wave of reaction that followed. Remember I mentioned this before as well, Dave, like the anti-war movement around the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Tens of millions of people achieved nothing. This is something that we're all going to have to internalize. You know? The people that have been benefiting from this system require this fetishization of nonviolent mobilization. Why? Because it's not a threat to them. It's not a threat to anything. It doesn't change anything. Oh, chief face syndrome over here. So that's why I wanted to mention that, like the January 6th thing and the trucker convoy thing, and how I do not agree with like supporting these reactionary movements. But I do think taking a look at some of the tactics that they were employing is something that we should take a look at. And start to think about how eventually on the left we can have a movement that actually presents itself as a threat to the ruling class, to the establishment, in a way that these nonviolent mobilizations just never have. I think we should think long and hard about that. Not unrelated, but that 4-part piece that VJ posted about a new non-aligned movement / internationalist movement is a really good hit of hopium. Where is that in the Discord server? Old Dutch? That does sound like something I would be interested in. That's what I mean, though. It's like there needs to be a movement, a social movement that is not interested in reform. It's not interested in raising awareness, and it's not interested in pressuring elected officials. But it's about making our complete contempt for this entire system apparent to everyone. And that's framed in this idea that everything about all of this stuff is just not legitimate. The Canadian government, not legitimate. The whole forget about the Supreme Court. The whole United States government, it's not legitimate. And they say, well, you know, in our system of laws, we can only do this incremental thing. It's like, no, we can do whatever we want. All this shit is made up. I think that's something that if we care about anything ever actually getting better, this slide into open fascism and climate chaos. You know, sometimes it seems it's impossible to confront that in any way meaningfully, or that it's totally inevitable. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, but we do have to start just completely jettisoning this idea of that has been beaten into us about what constitutes legitimate protest and what doesn't, and what constitutes violence and what doesn't. I was getting a little outrageous, I think, the other day when we were talking about this, but like, and I don't have any arrogance about this or overstate my own importance or overstate my own ability to affect this kind of change. But we were talking about, you know, the think tank, the Rousseau Institute for Western Destabilization, and about how I would like to start having some actual events. You know, it's fun to do this show and talk on Twitch. I would like to start taking some of these conversations, start bringing it into the public space. Because again, once you start having these conversations in a room with a bunch of people, well, then it's kind of doing politics. It's no longer just this fun media thing. I would like to start, and I talked about the 5-year plan, right? Eventually we can start doing some events, maybe right in Ottawa, Ontario, right down the street from the Canadian government. And start openly talking about this. Start openly talking about how we are trying to destabilize the West. Start openly talking about how we don't recognize the government as being legitimate. We're not interested in reform. We're not interested in meeting with politicians in our Western liberal democracy, or getting elected or getting seats in our Western liberal democracy. We're here to talk about how we don't recognize the democratic legitimacy of this government. We don't recognize it. And trying to create enough of a media shitstorm where you can at least get that message out to people and say, like, don't vote for this party or this party. Join this movement that we have and recognize that, like, none of this is legitimate. Our whole government is not legitimate. And start recognizing the idea that basically use the media to get this message to people and say, like, we're not trying to influence votes, or we're not trying to start a new party. We're trying to openly question the idea about whether we can just do something entirely different. And say, like, if you back us, here's what we're going to offer you. When it comes to housing, when it comes to climate. And just start being a little bit more clear about what our goals are here, and forgetting this idea that we can only influence the elected officials are there. This is the 5-year plan for this community. And eventually we'll get there. Sorry. It does sound like you need to create a new party, an actual socialist party. But this is the whole problem, though, is that, like, parties are you're still legitimizing our parliamentary democracy. Right? And you can, you know, that's one avenue of doing things, of starting a new party and getting people to vote into this, get people voted into this system. But, like, what I'm talking about, though, is the idea of casting doubt on the legitimacy of our entire democratic system, and just not recognizing it. So it's not even about a party that can participate in these systems, but it's literally just like trying to organize a movement that just rejects the notion that we have to continue with these institutions as they are. And like millions of people, especially young people, are very dissatisfied with this current situation. And if you can get enough of a movement together, you can get that message out to people. And not in this reactionary way, not in a movement like the trucking convoy that's based around
to talk you through all this.
I'm voting for Kodos.
Thank you, Progressive Canuck. Thanks for the 9 months of tier 1. You know, not just how are you going to say to people, this is what we stand for, this is what we promise, if you don't have a vessel with which to deliver these changes? I guess it goes back to my my notion where you can just say, like, well, we're the new government. Whatever was there before, we're just the new government. You can go through us now. Maybe you're right. Maybe that does require a party. I don't know. But like, my point is, though, that I think we need to question the idea about our entire system of democratic governments and just suggest that it's not adequate to get us through any of these crises, whether you're talking about housing, the climate, the assault on trans rights, the assault on reproductive rights. Our system that's in place right now and this in this process of incremental reform is not enough to deliver the change that we need. Really glad I found your stream today. Thanks. Thank you, Ellen. Thanks for, but join the Discord. Okay? Join the Discord. We love to talk about this kind of stuff. I'm recognizing Rob as the new PM of Canada, Guaido style. Well, that was the thing I was joking about on Friday when I was talking about this. Is you just, once you have this movement in place, then you can you reach out to North Korea, you reach out to Venezuela or Nicaragua and Iran, and you're just like, we're the new government now, so you can just go through us now. And eventually, when you see if you can get one of these places to recognize you,
count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Sea of Noise. Thanks for the gifted sub. Just give me a moment. I just have to go to the bathroom, folks. Normally on Mondays, I do have a bit more time. I am going to go get my kid a bit early today, so I think probably in 20 minutes, I'm going to stop the stream. Given the difficulties I was describing earlier, I don't want to leave him at school too long. Again, usually he stays a little bit later today, but I said we would go get him early. Let me just go to the bathroom. I'll come back. We can hang out for another 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna say goodnight. I'll be right back. Sorry, I just saw something really funny. Check this out. We've all been this guy. And misses the tackle there as well. Classic. Again, we've all been there. What was my title before? Was it What is Legitimate Protests? I think worthwhile. Again, I don't have a ton of time left today. Worthwhile, though, I think, to look at Kwame Ture about this, as usual. As with anything.
Becoming conscious is linked to mobilization and organization, something we mentioned last year.
Again, so this, I'll say it again and again and again. We've seen countless mobilizations over the last couple decades. Millions of people, millions and millions of people have mobilized over the last couple decades for the climate, reproductive rights, social justice, racial justice, systemic racism, mass incarceration, gay rights, trans rights, immigrants' rights. There's been millions and millions of people mobilizing now for decades and decades and have changed nothing, have led to nothing. I'm kind of having fun talking about possible alternatives to that. But I mean, on a serious note, though, this is what we always need to: environmental justice. I believe I said the climate, so I'm counting that in there. But that's why this clip from Kwame Ture will always be really, really relevant. To talk about if we're going to talk about the failure of mobilization, we have to talk about other strategies that are going to deliver actual results or actual change.
Becoming conscious is linked to mobilization and organization, something we mentioned last year. We must make clear distinctions between mobilizers and organizers. To be an organizer, you must be a mobilizer, but being a mobilizer doesn't make you an organizer. Much confusion is to be found here. Malcolm X was a great mobilizer. He was a great organizer. Martin Luther King was a great mobilizer. He was not a great organizer. These facts can be easily seen from King and Malcolm. When Malcolm went to a place, he left a mosque. When King went to demonstrations, he broke down desegregation and he moved on. As a matter of fact, King was not concerned with organization to the point that even though he was the most popular Baptist preacher in America, without the shadow of a doubt, and probably, beyond the shadow of a doubt, the most loved, he could not become president of the National Baptist Convention. Yeah, so many of them. The National Baptist Convention. As a matter of fact, if my memory serves me correctly now, and I remember it was Muhammad Speaks that carried the article on the front page in 1964 when King tried to become president of the National Baptist Convention. There was so much confusion there that a minister was actually pushed off the stage and died in the struggle. Yeah. And of course, King lost. The man who won was a reactionary man by the name of Jackson. He never did nothing for the people, never cared about the people, just was a pork chop minister who used their money to put gas in his big Cadillac. But he was organized. But he was organized. We say that we must come to know the difference between mobilization.
I mean, listen, the anti-abortion movement, the pro-forced birth movement have been, to say nothing else, they have been extremely organized. They have been extremely organized for decades. They've been waging political struggle, and they've been engaging in armed struggle over that time, side by side, in order to get to this current moment in American history when it comes to the rollback of reproductive rights and abortion rights. They've been highly organized, which you don't have to like it, as I don't, but I think we should point that out. They didn't, the anti-abortion movement, the pro-forced birth movement was not satisfied with a couple of mobilizations where they can hold up signs and let everyone know how they felt. They were not interested in that. They were interested in actually rolling back these rights. That was not a game to them. That wasn't a joke. That wasn't some like hobby that they did they were engaging for some kind of personal catharsis. They were highly organized to achieve a serious, specific political goal, which they're achieving as a result of this organization.
Organization, because the enemy will use mobilization to demobilize us. Mobilization is very easy. Very, very easy. Because since we're people who are instinctively ready to respond against acts of injustice, anytime there's one little act of injustice, we can blow it up and we'll find people who come and make some mass demonstration around it. Miss Sally lost her job. Let's rally. She will get her job back. People will come and rally. So-and-so got kicked out of school because the teacher's unjust. The people will come and rally. They will come to rally at issues. And this is what mobilization does. It mobilizes people around issues. Those of us who are revolutionary are not concerned with issues. We're concerned with the system. The difference must be properly understood. The difference must be properly understood. Mobilization usually leads for reform action.
And very good point, Dave, as well. They do have capital behind them as well. As do these like neo-fascist movements like the trucker convoy or January 6th as well. It's a false revolution. They're upholding the status quo. They're backed by capital. Big distinction, which is important to point out. You're right. That's something we will never have. And generally, if we have capital behind us, that's a sign that we're probably on the wrong side of something.
Not to revolutionary action. If we would look scientifically at the October 16th million and more march, we would see clearly that this was a mobilized event, not an organized event. We must know clearly the difference between mobilization and organization. One of the characteristics of mobilization is that it is temporary. Organization is permanent and eternal. Clear differences must be made because the unconscious can usually be captured easily around one-issue items, around mobilization items, but it's hard to catch them around organization. But these
This is Kwame Ture,
must
Ellen.
be brought to organization. We must transform mobilization to organization. We say the enemy will come and use mobilization to demobilize us. Many brothers and sisters who've been to the military...
Highly recommend you check out more of Kwame. We watch a lot of his content here on the channel. We often, at the urging of community member Red Scary, we often have Kwame Ture days where we just sit around and watch Kwame Ture speeches all day. Highly, highly relevant to all these discussions, though. And of course, someone who was marginalized as a civil rights figure precisely because he represented an actual threat to the establishment. Because he was not interested in this this process of nonviolent mobilization. He had no interest in that. That's exactly why he was an actual threat to the established order.
And more march will say to you, I was there. Well, what are you doing today, my sister? I was there. There weren't too many sisters out there, but you know, with 1 million brothers together, you know where I had to be. I was there. Yes. And then, of course, you find brothers, yeah, I was there. I helped you. What are you doing today, brother? If we're not careful, we allow mobilization to become events. The struggle is never an event. It's a process, a continual, eternal process. Conscious.
I mean, like you're saying, SSCHW4, what you're saying, violent organization is what is needed. Love to hear it. And again, I would never, ever use my platform here on Twitch to advocate for any kind of violence. Of course. That's not what I'm doing today. That's not what I'm going to be doing in the future, just to make that abundantly clear. But I think the takeaway from what we were talking about earlier is we do have to recognize, we do have to re-examine the idea of violence and what it is. Right? And as much as violent protest really makes a lot of people very uncomfortable, including me, which of course I don't support it, but we do have to recognize that the state has the perpetual right to use violence. Violently, like sending the cops in to beat the shit out of protesters. That's violence. Taking away welfare from people. Violence. Clear-cutting a rainforest in Brazil and assaulting the indigenous people that are trying to protest that. That's violence. Taking away abortion rights from people. People will die. That's violence. You know? Enacting laws that target trans teens. That's violence. And it's not really a acceptable solution for any of these various crises that we find ourselves in. Sam, thank you. I'm very, very trustworthy, as Sam Gerbs is pointing out. Any of these various crises that we find ourselves in right now, you know, within any of these issues, climate, housing, indigenous rights, reproductive rights, trans rights, anything. This very safe, officially sanctioned, non-violent protest, which does nothing to threaten the established order in any way, is not going to actually lead to any change. And neither is voting. Neither is voting for people that are involved in the system. Because our whole government, our whole society is in place to ensure that this system of exploitation continues unabated. And voting for no matter how good their intentions are, voting for someone in that system is not going to do anything to fundamentally change any of that. So we do need to re-examine this notion of violence, what it is, who's allowed to wield it, and who isn't, and why these things are the way they are. And you can tell, I mean, when you see the hand-wringing about people protesting outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house, I think is an example of the fact that that does constitute a threat, and that anything that actually makes these very powerful people feel unsafe and uncomfortable is something that people are highly devoted to ensuring that never happens, which I think should be a sign that not only should more of that kind of stuff happen, but probably we should go even farther than some of that stuff without getting into the details of what that would constitute. Neoliberalism is extremely violent, just peddles in soft violence by exporting much of it elsewhere and couching the real material violence domestically under means-tested restricted access to fundamental rights. Couldn't have said it better myself. Old Dutch. Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I wanted to get into more like Victory Day stuff. I'm out of time, though. I gotta go get my kid. Thanks again, everyone, for watching the stream and supporting the channel. It really, really means a lot. I'm going to be back tomorrow. We got plenty more to talk about tomorrow. Back tomorrow at noon. If it's your first time watching the stream, please, again, join the community. Join the Discord server. head on up to the events in the Discord server. We've got 9 coming events. We got a book club discussion on Wednesday. On Thursday, May 12th, we have the book club discussion is Washington Bullets by Vijay Prashad. Thursday, 9:15 p.m. Wednesday, 9:15 p.m. Excuse me. Thursday, 9 p.m. We have Kino for Comrades. Watching the film Medium Cool. Thanks to Doc Hollywood. We've got Babylon 5 discussion. We've got Theory Book Club, talking about Stalin's dialectical materialism. May 16th. You got Marbles. We got more movie nights. Lots of really great stuff going on in there. Make sure you join the Discord and make sure you continue to be part of this community. I'm gonna raid Bloodberry Tart, who I've never raided before. Bloodberry is just coming back from a hiatus from Twitch, doing kind of a subathon. I know just had surgery. Very fun Twitch streamers to go and support her. Thanks again for watching. Very fun Twitter account too as well. Yes. And in fact, everyone, when you raid Bloodberry's channel, please, if you want to do a raid spam, you can do a welcome back Barry raid spam, which I'm sure she and her community would appreciate. Okay, I gotta go. 3:30. Gotta go pick up my kid. Thanks again for watching. Join the Discord. I'll talk to you there. I'll see you tomorrow, noon Eastern, on the dot. I won't be late. Noon Eastern on the dot. I'll see you there. Peace.